Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? This seems to be a fairly uh, concise and compact room, so we can have a nice dialogue over the course of the next 50 minutes. Um, you know, connected cars, or connected vehicles, as we called it about 3, 4 years back, was still very much, you know, uh, what if cars can be connected to various devices through 4G and through various IoT devices, etc. Very much about the possibilities. With the coming of age of technology, as well as with the coming of age now of 5G, this is very much connected vehicles and connected everything, which I'm going to just refer to now, is very much ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's pervasive. It's happening, and it's now. Right. First, just to level set, because I know there are people from the automotive industry and there are people from the non-automotive industry in this forum, in this innovation conclave. So, just to kind of set context, when one refers to V2X, we are talking about vehicle to vehicle, obviously, you know, connectivity, vehicle to infrastructure, typically the highway infrastructure, vehicle to other networks, vehicle to pedestrians, vehicle to devices such as smartphones, and essentially any and everything. And the kind of use cases that are coming out are phenomenal. So, here to speak with me and to have a chat on this subject, Dr. Yashodhan Viji, as I will call him, and CVJ, my ex colleague from Tata Tech. We're all here gathered. So, without much ado, I'm going to first open this up with Dr. Yashodhan to ask his perspectives on what is his take on this V2X and how mature is it? Is it coming of age? And just one more thing before you go, Yashodhan, is by the way, this industry of connected vehicles is expected to be worth $220 billion by 2025, growing at the rate of 15% CAGR from now, or from already from 2016. So it is already leading the digital revolution because so much of data is being produced that India has a great opportunity to maximize, what we can do from here for India and for the world.
Thanks, Samir, and thank NASSCOM for arranging this event. First of all, it's the today's era we call with the AI, machine learning, electric mobility. I'm going to talk about more on the electric mobility with my domain, more on the batteries and BMS, where we can connect these dots. If we wanted to go, still there is a range anxiety, which really I want to buy electric vehicle or not, though there are fires coming up where people do lots of jugaad, especially in the two-wheeler domain. But more importantly, the connectivity from the digitalization point of view, it's all about how you connect the dots from mechanical, electrical, chemical point of view, and to make the sustainable product for our needs, not for the Western needs or not for our neighboring country needs. Because the country like India, at the same time, we have the temperature from 0 degree to 45 degrees C, where the Guwahati, where there is a humidity, then Chennai, Rajasthan, and especially in the automotive domain, when you develop the any battery pack, which is the main heart and brain of your any electric vehicle, is defined by how your components are arranged in a systematic way and more sustainable way. So I will go more further.
So straight away he's gone into the connectivity due to electrification, which we'll talk about in more detail. VG, your view.
Sure. Again, thanks Samir and thanks NASCOM for the opportunity. Glad to be here. I represent John Deere. It's the world's largest equipment manufacturer in the agriculture space. I would assume in the audience, folks do not necessarily are as well versed on the agriculture side of things. So I'll just set some context before we get into the details of what John Deere does, and especially on the technology front. Now let's look at a mature market like the US market. Okay, let's look at a farmer in the US. A typical farmer in the US would have a farm size of a few thousand acres. Okay, and this farm is not necessarily a single farm. It's not all connected. There could be different pieces of farms, may or may not be connected, joint, but altogether about a few thousand. Each single piece of farm could be anywhere between 200 and 700 acres. For comparison, in India, average farm size is about half an acre to 2 acres. So we're talking about farm sizes of 200 to 700 acres. And this entire farm is managed by a farmer along with about 2 or 3 full-time members, which could be just his family members, and a few helping hands, which are hired during peak season. So that's how he manages his operation. So the challenge is, how do you enable all of this to ensure that he's successful? And that's where John Deere comes in. Again, as I mentioned, John Deere is the largest agriculture equipment manufacturer, has been in the business for about 180 years. However, in the last couple of decades, Deere has been focused on transforming itself from being a pure play equipment manufacturer to move over to being a data driven technology company. And we'll have some examples where I can share of how that's happened. Let's start with a couple of examples. Earlier this year in the CES show in Vegas, the Consumer Electronics Show, right? It's the largest electronics show in the world. Deere unveiled its first fully autonomous tractor. And now this is a fully production ready tractor. This is not a POC or proof of concept or technology demonstration. This is a full ready, production ready equipment which was launched. This has about 6 stereo cameras which capture images. These are passed through deep neural networks where each image is then converted, each pixel on that image is converted and analyzed within 100 milliseconds to determine whether the machine should move forward or not. Another one is something called a See and Spray Select, which was released. This was a precision herbicide application machine. Okay. Now, See and Spray, what does it do? When a machine is moving on the field, when you're doing a spraying application, now these tractors are huge machines. For example, in a room like this, you could barely fit one tractor. So these are huge machines. And it'll have a spraying boom behind it, which could be almost 120 feet wide. And it'll have multiple nozzles, which are individually controlled. Now, what See and Spray did was put cameras on it, about 36 cameras, which are about a meter spread apart. And they continuously capture images while it's running on the field, analyzes what it sees on the ground, and determines whether what they are seeing on the ground is a weed or a plant. And if it determines it's a weed, it will spray herbicide on it so it's taken care of without impacting anything on the plant. So that's the level of technology that's already out there. This is just the beginning of the journey. There's many more exciting things that's coming up in this space. Again, we'll get into a few more details as we get into the discussion, but I'll leave it at that for now.
It's going to be very exciting, the discussion from the connected ecosystem and electrification to the connected ecosystem in agri. Let's ask CVJ, what's his perspective, having worked with multiple companies in the automotive space?
So thanks, Samir, and thanks, NASSCOM, being part of this session. I'm glad to be here. As Tata Technologies, we help our customers so to provide solutions in maintaining systems in space. Today's topic is V2X. So I would first dwell on few aspects or dimensions of this ecosystem which makes V2X happen. I would say. So first is technology. Samir dwelled upon that. The huge disruption happening. If you look at even last 10 years, the way the change of disruption in technology has happened, different emerging technologies that we see, IoT, AML, conversational bots, and a lot of things, augmented reality. So this is now becoming mainstream. It's no more something like running in some pilot use case and stuff, or some one company doing it. Everybody is using that, and this is the creating a base for what we are going to see, what is to come. The second aspect is data. So data is growing multifold. It's as per some one report, we are going to see like 50x kind of data, 50 to 100x kind of data, and with 5G, I don't know what would be the explosion. So as you get more and more data, the possibilities also increase of using data for a lot of insights and decision making and enabling, helping the drivers, occupants, and the community. Third aspect is the cashless economy. So we have seen Digital India coming, and all the online services coming in. So
connectivity is everywhere now. So everybody of us is connected, smartphone penetration. Everybody has a smartphone now. So it's no more new thing to have. So that way, it also gives another element to the ecosystem to get the individual connected back to the vehicle and the overall ecosystem as such. We see focus on road safety and uh, and safety as overall. Uh, so safety also brings in lot of aspects of getting guidance, getting help from the environment, so that one can drive the vehicle safe, one can make the surroundings safe, and these are the different elements I feel which are going to make this V2X, as you rightly said, whether it's vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to infrastructure, everything possible. And I would rather say uh, it is about more about the software defined vehicle, I would call it. So when I say software defined vehicle, it's the connected ecosystem that is helping the vehicle to navigate within that environment, and that is going to be the thing, and that is the thing now. And V2X, C is cellular, but there are other technologies to that. But V2X as such is around that software defined vehicle. That's what I think.
Excellent. Just a factoid for everybody. A typical autonomous vehicle consumes and processes about 4,000 gigabytes of data per day. That's like the minimum it does. There's far more. And imagine if there were hundreds and thousands of vehicles, how much of data needs to be processed. We'll come back to data, but CVJ, you touched upon it. I wanted to talk about the human element for a minute. What are exactly the drivers for this, vehicle to X or connected cars or connected vehicles? What need are we addressing, or are we just getting swept by technology? You touched upon it, but I'm allowing you to start. You start first. Yeah.
So thanks, Samir. That's a nice question. Uh, when we talk about key drivers, safety definitely is one element to it. But there are multiple other factors. Like if you talk about a typical vehicle and primarily the cities, we are spending 1 to 2 hours, anywhere between 1 to 2 hours commuting. Now it's a non-productive time. It's a loss to the individual, loss to the nation. You have to look in from a larger perspective, not only for the individual perspective. It's a loss because the person is not very productive. Secondly, you look at the congestions and the slow moving traffic. Report says it is 5 to 7 kilometers per hour at peak times, and that's very affecting to the person also, person who is driving. Even if you are not driving and just sitting in the vehicle, it is still not helping you. So one driver is how do you give an experience within the vehicle to the person, because now we have seen pandemic, we have seen work from home. I don't call it work from home, it's more about work from anywhere. So uh, technology was there, but pandemic gave us the opportunity to unleash that possibility of working from anywhere. So it was there earlier, it's not a new technology. But then you can be connected to office, you can be connected to anything from within the vehicle if you have get some time through that, if you are assisted by the vehicle as you go to autonomous. There are levels to autonomy and things. Second thing primarily is safety. Safety is from two aspects. One is the driver or the occupant, which is within the vehicle, and there is safety to, I would call it, other stakeholders, the community, pedestrians, the property, and everything. So almost there are 1.5 lakh fatal accidents. So road accident related deaths in India, and worldwide also road deaths count in first 10 as cause of death. So it's a serious problem or a concern. And New York City has its connected vehicle platform program where they have a vision zero, so zero fatalities. And how do we leverage V2X? So how do we make it more safer? because 80% of the accidents are caused by errors which are more due to the driver or the driving patterns. And how do we assist? Through different level of autonomy. How do we guide from the environment, whether at the crossing or the intersections through V2I, make it more safer. So these are the key drivers I feel which are going to help V2X also address safety and other concerns.
Very good, CVJ. Thank you so much. In the agricultural world, which India hasn't, in many ways, I know there are applications of connectivity even in India where people are leveraging, and those stories are yet to be told. But from your point of view, what are those drivers? Why do you
Sure.
even need it?
And Samir, I'll give examples of the drivers, and these drivers are applicable globally, whether you look at it from a matured market perspective or you look at a market like India, which is still early stage of maturity from an agriculture perspective. It goes down to some of the basic stuff. Population globally is increasing at a pretty decent pace, along with economic prosperity of the folks around. So one of the numbers that's going around is saying in the next 50 years, the demand for food is going to double. So you're expected to have 100% more food generated, grown for the population to be able to survive. That's one. Second is the arable land is shrinking globally. So think about it. It's a double whammy for the farmer. He's expected to double his output with reduction in land that he's going to work on. And that's where technology is expected to play a key role in helping him improve his farm operation as well as improve yield. Third one, again, we have been hearing it again applicable within India as well as everywhere else in the world, is migration, manpower migration, moving away from rural places to cities, right? Agriculture is predominantly a rural activity, and most of the manpower, the younger workforce, is moving away from rural places to major cities. So the availability of skilled manpower is a huge challenge globally, and it's increasing even in India. So how do you address it? With the demand from food continues to increase, how do you get that? And that's where some of these technologies come in, and the opportunity for efficiency is huge. If I have to just share a data point about India, right? If you look at rice and wheat, India has the largest area under cultivation in the world for rice and wheat. But if you look at the yield output, our number comes in between 15th and 20th or 25th. Just imagine if you can move that number from 25 even to 15, forget being in the top 10, what happens to the food production? And therein lies the opportunity. And that's what makes this whole space so exciting.
That's really fantastic. Vijay has touched upon so many of the sustainability development goals that are talked about by the World Bank: food, fundamental resources, water, less land, population increasing. It's incredible. Thank you for that perspective, a high level perspective. Yashodhan, from your point of view, which is my point of view, because we are in the electrification space, what is the driver?
One of the thing that I must say, like what Chandrasekhar has mentioned, I see in a different point of view, is India really need autonomous vehicles? Where you talk about the New York and there is a zero accident, but here, just like give an example, if there is a no signal, we often face the issue in Pune or other parts, still there is no catastrophe. People admire each other, they cross the road. This is the reality. Whether understanding level is different league than comparatively to US and Europe. Yes, the autonomous vehicle helps the digitalization and all that technological thing, but for our problems we have to look in our way how autonomous domain help in other fields rather than the automotive vehicles. This I don't know. And the other is when we say the connectivity or big data, for example, Pune and Mumbai, people still have the range anxiety whether I have to buy electric vehicle or not. The big data will help where to put the charging stations. Suppose I am going from, I'm just giving the local example, Chinchwad to Katraj, electric bus. Still, people didn't know where to put the exact charging stations to charge the batteries because that's the main soul of electrification. And this digital connectivity helps even the most of the times the electric vehicle domain, the BMS, battery management system. When you do the Tesla launch new version, that battery is a one aspect, but every time they update the software where more features, where there is a safety aspects which play a role. And the electric mobility domain, you can't tell your customer don't drive in extreme temperature in Rajasthan, Guwahati or in Leh Ladakh, because that will affect your cycle life and obviously the performance. So this connectivity might give some of the answers for our own problems.
Very true. And if I can relate to that, one of the big issues that's cropping up nowadays in electric vehicles is the safety of the battery. Right? Everybody's talking about incidents happening, etc. So connected systems, particularly the BMS giving out data with VCU captures, etc., can tell you predictively whether this is going to fail or not and by when and how. And perhaps that predictive analytics data is very, very useful in keeping, not only the vehicle safe, but also your anxiety lesser because you, after all, you want to drive them.
And just to add on that, like if you are driving the electric vehicle, so after 4 or 5 years, you have a X years warranty. And still by running the vehicle in Indian road condition, temperature, flood, still people don't know globally how much exact energy is still reserved in the battery pack. It's still a Nobel Prize question where you play with the software with the BMS and then use that battery pack for stationary storage for next 5 6 years and then do for the recycling. So it's a process where the digitalization, software connectivity play a very important role to go forward.
I think that's a topic for another another debate. But
Samir,
VG, I wanted to go ahead. You want to say
just
something?
before your next question, the point that you raised about analytics and big data, just wanted to share an example. Because of the amount of data that we've been able to collect over the last decade and a half, we have released solutions where we are able to proactively tell a customer that the machine is going to fail. Now imagine in an agriculture field, it's a very, very time sensitive operations. Just to give example, if you think of planting, there is a 5 to 7 day window in which you need to plant. And if you don't plant within that, if you miss that, your end result is not going to be as to the level that you expected. Your yield is going to get impacted if you don't plant during that window of 5 to 7 days. We are talking about large fields across the entire country trying to do planting at the same time. These machines are running 24/7 without stop. They cannot afford machine downtime. In that scenario, how do you enable your technology to give the customer an upfront idea that something is going to go wrong and be prepared for it or take preventive action before the machine goes down so that he can continue his operations without any downtime?
Awesome. I was going to ask VG, since you're with the microphone, um, what applications are you close to? Do you view as important, or you are involved in your organization? Maybe we'll start.
Sure.
With that.
So let me give a few examples. And again, all of these pieces, whether it's connectivity, whether it's big data, these are all foundational pieces to the domain that we operate in. So if you look at a crop cycle, there are four major pieces, right? There is the planning stage or the preparation stage before the seed goes in. There's planting when the seed is actually put. There's application where you're doing spraying multiple times during the season. And then finally, that's harvest, right? All of this are extremely precision oriented, sophisticated operations which require a lot of precision, right? Now, when a John Deere machine is passing through a field at any given point in time, it's collecting huge amount of data both at the machine level about what the machine is doing, as well as geotag farm related data of saying what's happening on the field. And all of this data is passed to our cloud, the John Deere Operations Center, where the farmer or his advisor can go back and evaluate and generate insights of what's gone on. And that helps them take decision for the next operation on the same day or the same season or coming season. For example, let's look about last year's data, right? He would have done an entire crop cycle. He goes and looks at the yield map of saying what happened in my field, and he can look at what parts of my field did well compared to others. And there is enough variable out there which can tell him why a particular part of the field did not do well. Based on that, he can plan appropriately for the next year saying whether I need to increase or reduce seed population, whether I need to change the seed spacing, whether I need to change seed varieties, whether I need to use different chemicals, whether I need to do different setting on my harvesters, right? Once you do this planning on the cloud, all of that data is transferred seamlessly onto the machine, which then executes it automatically without the driver's assistance. That's the level of data that's getting used right now. Another example is in-field data sharing. I spoke about the size of the field, right? Now these fields are so huge that you're not going to run only one machine at a time. There are multiple machines running at the same time to do these operations. These machines need to be able to talk to each other. So there is real-time seamless data transfer happening, saying what have I done, what has the other machine done, so that there is no overlap that they are doing, as well as ensure that complete fields are covered during the operation. Third example, remote management. A farmer does not, in the US, a farmer is not necessarily on the field. He'll have operators who are running these machines. He's sitting back in his office or home, can monitor it real time. Tells him where his machines are, not only where his machines are, how are they doing, and the quality of the progress, right? And if he sees something is not progressing well, he can take corrective action. Let me give another specific example. Let's look at harvesting. Now, harvesters are extremely complex machines, and it requires a lot of settings to be ensure that you're doing harvesting properly. Some of these operators are not as skilled and do not necessarily know the settings and what changes need to be done, right? Now, imagine you have 4 or 5 harvesters running in the field. The farmer sitting at his home and watching it, and he notices that one of the machine is doing really well, is harvesting well. He can pick up the settings of those machines and copy paste them onto the other machines and ensure that the rest of the machines also update the setting, and he's able to get the best possible harvest out from his field. So those are capabilities which have been enabled. Again, the foundation for all of this is back to connectivity, back to big data that we have been investing in all these years.
These are fantastic examples. In fact, there are examples in India as well where people are using IoT and connected fields to at least get a kind of an overview of when they need to do the next thing. They may not have an autonomous vehicle, but at least they get that dashboard and they're able to plan in advance, etc. So there are villagers who are actually using it. I'm going to come to you, Yash. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing, like you given the example with the US with your data. So one thing, when company has a plan to shift to Indian scenario where there is a diverse range and as well as where there is no grid connectivity, I'm talking about microgrids, which is storage and all that, how this is going to work. And that's something that we are in the process of addressing here. So then again, just like most of the MNC companies, you cannot copy paste what's worked in the Western world and copy it in Indian context. The contexts are different. The maturity of the entire agriculture industry is very, very different. So we are in the process of adjusting our solutions, our products, and rolling them out. So there are some advanced technologies, which one of them we have rolled out last year, and the others are coming out next year. We have a complete roadmap of how these are going to come out to the Indian market. But yes, as you said, they are going to be very, very tailored to the Indian context so that it works in India. We are very clear that what worked in the US in a 2000-acre farm is definitely not going to work in a half-acre field in India. So the solutions are being adjusted appropriately.
Super. CVJ, CVJ spoke about productivity, he spoke about safety, he spoke about the experience, and he spoke about one very important thing, pure sanity. Going from Pune to Mumbai, I do it every week, twice, and it's just driving me insane. What do you get involved in the most? What areas are you involved in as far as connectivity is concerned?
Yeah, so primarily it's across various industries and customers we are working with. We have different areas we can classify the overall applications into. But before that, just to address
Sure.
Yashwantan's point. So while US may be at advanced stage, in India, I understand we have different mix of vehicles on the road. We have different kind of road conditions. But autonomy also has its own levels of maturity, and we are already seeing adaptive cruise control, assisted braking, uh, DMS, driver monitoring systems coming in place. So even a driver falling sleepy or
Hmm.
for any reasons under influence or things. So fleets are going to get benefited by driver ratings, which are pure algo based things. Connectivity and algorithms, AI/ML just helps do that. So it doesn't need a very high level of autonomy to do that, but definitely it helps you in reduce any damage, any accidents, and also assist the person. That is one aspect, and that is one of the areas, Samir, that we also work on. The other areas, primarily, if we look at it, it's different. Basically, we see navigation everywhere, route planning, route optimization for fleet. That is another area where fleet wants to have the fleet to be more fuel efficient, and so that they spend less on the things. There is more on the vehicle health, integrated vehicle health and safety. So predictive maintenance, any eventual breakdown that is going to happen. So these are the areas that are being worked upon. Obviously, there are regulatory things also, emergency call and call, and those things are there definitely. Then there is something that is leveraged also internally by the companies. So how do we leverage the data? We talk about data for our design and development. So looking at the actual data on the ground and helping design development, even helping service on the eventual inventory and stuff. So that's something going to come. Then it also helps customer profiling from the overall things. So internal uses are there. Monetization, providing consultancy. It is more effective in case of fleet, where you can provide consultancy on based on various driving patterns and their usage, how they can improve on the fuel economy and stuff, and how to make the fleet effective. Insurance and other things are yet to come. There are certain regulatory things, there are certain other things to be worked upon but eventually it will come.
Yeah.
And online banking, online services, entertainment is anyway hygiene thing.
Yeah, one big thing that we are noticing is that all OEMs world over are moving towards vehicle as a service. And vehicle as a service is enabled by nothing but connectivity and big data and analytics. So unless you have all these three working in sync, you're not going to be able to provide that as a service. I've seen that actively happening in the e-mobility world, where all the fleets are moving in that direction and OEMs are enabling that. So that's a big topic of debate. But just to keep this lively, I'm going to not ask one or two questions which I had planned earlier on technology, because you can get lost in technology. I'm going to allow some questions from the audience to kind of liven this up a little bit, and we'll come back to technology if we have time to close it out. Yeah, if that's okay. So I would at this stage like to go around and request for questions as they come. Um, we have about 15 minutes, so I'm going to just keep this a little bit lively.
My question to Dr. Yashodharan, so you touched about battery and all those things. So everyone want to move to EV from a sustainability, from a climate perspective. But I don't see in India we are evolving from the battery space. If you ask me, we don't have a good EV car produced by Indian manufacturer which have a good range. If you want to go for a good EV vehicle, I need to go to the German manufacturers or Chinese manufacturers. It will cost more than 50 lakhs. So what are you doing in this space to evolve India as a market?
Yeah, thanks. Very good question. Like, government is doing one thing, like PLI scheme, might be you have read, to make in India cells, because at the moment and still for few years we have a dependency on our neighboring country, which owns the lithium mines to Fe and all that material. So yes, there is a dependency. As you mentioned, at the moment the companies like Tata, Mahindra are making the electric vehicle. Nexon is a great success, and it's all about range anxiety. Every day or every week I'm not going to Pune, Goa. Every day I'm going to office, say 50-kilometer max, or two-wheeler. From housewife to college kids, they are driving less than 25 to 30 kilometers. And the battery, good quality, Indian manufacturers, Bajaj, then TVS, and startups like Ather who are doing fantastic job. They are doing the two-wheeler, where you have initially few years warranty, 2 to 3, but if you are driving in that domain less than 30 to 40 kilometer, you will have 6 to 8 years no problem. So that is one thing. the lithium ion battery cells making is going on, and parallelly, if we have resources, but we have to look the alternative technology, say sodium ion, though the energy is not very high, but it's a power and which matches our requirements, a country like India, where safety is the main, and temperature, because the country, if the temperature rises, it's a killer for the battery. And everything comes to the battery. If you talk the EV domain, more than 40% costs come from the battery. So there are good players. So my request to everyone, get make in India vehicles, especially two-wheeler, which brand, rather than going for the cheap. If you go cheap, you go up. So that's the thing, because there are a lot of fires and you have to resolve that. So give some breathing time, because IC engine is 150-year-old. Still there are fires. Tesla got many fires initial stage. So don't be scared. Yes, this is a bomb, but you have to handle it carefully, and this is the way to go forward.
I don't know how many electric users in this audience. Okay, I am one, and I'm completely, as far as city driving and as far as last mile driving is concerned, not an issue. Not an issue at all. Forget about range anxiety. Even storing and saving the car for 30 days when I went on leave and I went on a trip, came back from 99%, it went to 93%. So, not an issue. It's only when you're going in intercity, whatever all the statements he's made are all correct. So, I would say jump and use it, it's fun. Anyway, next question. We don't want to get into just electric mode here. So, you may want to state your name so that it becomes more interesting.
Thank you. My name is Sachin. I have two questions. One, as you rightly mentioned, a lot of big data will be collected while these connected vehicles are in operations and all. So, how do you think and where do you think this can probably help in a country like India, where there are issues which are very, very basic at nature, such as the basic infrastructure, the overall commute time, as well as optimization of your overall commute experience. That would be one. The second thing, how again this data and this connected vehicles, if you put it to larger perspective, like the public transport, this is like pretty poor in India right now. How that can be optimized using technology as well as this collective vehicle platforms.
Sachin, who are you asking, or can I redirect
All
to
three of them. I mean, they are all
anybody? Okay.
experts, so I
All
don't. I
right. So
don't want to
maybe
bias.
VG, you want to start first, and CVJ, you can.
So I'll again speak from an agriculture domain because that's where I operate. And India, again, as I said, for us, whatever I spoke about, whatever example I spoke, were more of the evolved Western countries. That's where the market is mature and ready for all of this. We still believe India is very, very early in this game of connected tractors and big data from an India perspective. It started. You see a lot of interesting agri-tech startups doing some interesting work in this space. So it started. Long way for us to go. The challenges in India with, as I said, starting with small farm size. How do you make it profitable, effective to give an effective solution in half an acre is a much bigger challenge than for anybody to say I can operate, give you a solution in a 200-acre field. It's very, very different. What crops to plant, when to do your irrigation, all of those solutions have started. Connected vehicles, connected tractors in India, if you ask me today, at least 10 years out, if not more. There's a lot of basic things, even mechanization. From a pure mechanization perspective, we have a long way to go in the farm industry. First, all of that will pick up, and then will come the stage for us to talk about some of these advanced technologies being used in India. But I'm hopeful it's not going to take as long as what it took the rest of the world. Just like any other technology we take of mobile technologies, we are going to leapfrog a lot of these things because technologies are already available. So it will come, but not in the near future.
So CVJ, can I answer one question? Um, Look, I deal a lot with fleets. One thing I do know in India is that a lot of commuting that happens between people as well as between and with goods is moving from single owners to fleets, and that market is growing extremely rapidly. Now, when you want to run your fleet, one of the biggest thing you need is data, because you want to optimize your fleet size, you want to optimize where your fleet runs from where to where, how are you doing your driver analytics properly? Are you effectively utilizing your whatever journey? Are you charging your infrastructure if you're using electric fleet, etc.? Data is required more in India than anywhere else, if you ask me, in the next 2 years. If fleets are going to actualize their returns on investment, because it's all about running a business, it's all about optimizing using big data. So it's going to be a huge requirement. And I'll tell you that most OEMs are not bringing their fleets or selling to fleets such as Blue Smart and others. They're actually selling them data driven analytics more than just the fleet, because they're saying you can optimize using our environment. So trust me, that's happening here and now.
Can't agree more, Samir, on that. More or less same thing that I wanted to talk about. The other aspect the data also helps on is the way it helps on the fleet and many other things. Some activity has started on that front. As Vijay said, it will take some time to mature to a level where we see it everywhere. The other aspect is like today we have multiple regulations coming up, emission regulations coming up. So using data and simulating the environments or the conditions and using AIML to expedite that and get faster to the proven vehicle is something that we are doing that in one of the cases, and data is helping there with the connected vehicle being run though in a prototype state. So those are also areas where within India also we are doing that. And eventually, even from a Indian condition perspective, like say roads, definitely it has improved a lot, and one of the world class roads we are having now in India also. So it is going to improve definitely. But we relate Indian roads with potholes. A simple pothole detection kind of a small application, okay, can help, and it is there. Uh, mm, I've not seen this with Indian thing, but Western slippery road detection and informing other vehicles about the slippery condition. That is relevant in India because we have that conditions everywhere. We have monsoons in all those kind of conditions on the road. So there is an Indian context to all these applications, though not for some very far-fetched applications. And on the other second question, there was one point which I forgot or missed in the earlier application thing. Uh, Smart cities is the thing now. It's happening and it is bound to happen. Multimodal transport is something that is the future. Today you go by a cab to a place, pick up a metro or a plane, and then land into another area, pick up something else. How do we integrate this? And I have seen this, heard this in one of the visions of smart cities by one city. So it's not that it is not going to happen in India, it is there. It's not yet on the road, but it's there in the vision. So definitely it will happen sometime.
Just to add you on that, like in my previous work, we have given the battery packs to over 1,000 electric buses in India. We have many million kilometer data in Indian condition. Still the question is, it's early stage. I have a data, but how to use that data? Don't know how to make a business case. It will help in safety, connectivity, charging infrastructure, and multimodal is going to come. Like for example, if I fly to Bangalore and Bangalore to X electronic city, I use the electronic vehicle. Still, there is no system in India to have a carbon footprint. I get a tax benefit. If it happens, people will start using it, and electric buses will go like a hockey stick, and then two and three wheeler. Still, car is not affordable. If some OEM come up with less than 10 lakh rupees car with electric single charge 200 kilometer, people will think that's the reality at the moment. But electric buses, because public transport, people, half of India use public transport. We are talking about that population, not about the smart city where hardly people use. So electric buses will go much faster in India.
Thank you. all of you for your inputs. We'll probably have time for one more question, and then we'll wrap up. So, would you like to go? Yeah. सर उनको जरा माइक्रोफोन देंगे.
Thank you. So, lot of.
What's your name?
Sorry, my name is Anu Kaushal from Cummins. I heard lot of new ideas and on technology. What I am trying to understand from you all, maybe you are all already doing it, is that are we having a startup mindset? Because you are all established companies already, right? But are you having a startup mindset where you are providing solutions to the customers or consumers without thinking of getting profit and trying to build up a market? Because that's what the buzzword is, right? Startups are trying to get more data from the consumers and then build up a future revenue stream rather than current. So is it something which you all are also looking at?
Yeah, like just to give the answer, my previous organization, it's like a startup from scratch to gone to very high level. The electric mobility domain, it's we have to work whether it is established companies like Cummins, John Deere, or Tata Technologies. We have to work like a startup because all we are connecting the dots from mechanical, electrical, chemical, and to build a product. And there should be a iterations. And because we are competing with existing 150-year-old IC engine, so you have a mindset with the startup culture and people are adopting that. Then only the companies like Ather from scratch or other companies are getting success. So it should be a startup culture in this domain, whether it is established or not.
Great question. So let me give you a John Deere example, and it's an absolutely the way we have done it, right? As I said, John Deere is about a 180-year plus company. Entire history has been all equipment manufacturing organization, but the leadership a few decades ago had the vision to say this is where we want to head. And at that point in time, they carved out a small group, started with about 2 or 3 members group, saying that let's focus on technology. And that group eventually got to where it is today. We used to be called Intelligent Solutions Group. How do we make our machines more intelligent, right? Started with a 3 member group over from 1998 operate, and they were treated separately. Nobody looked at their P&L, nobody looked at the return on investments. A lot of money was put in, and that's paying dividend 2 decades later. Today, when we released our new strategy about 6 months ago, technology is the central pillar of that whole strategy for the entire enterprise. And that's where the change has come, starting from that 2 or 3 member team and the leadership believing this is how we need to do it, to today where it's the core part of our strategy.
About when the same thought process, what about investing in India? Getting the solutions delivered to the consumers in India without even saying, because Indian consumer or customer may not be able to spend money out of the pocket, right? So, but there's a lot of for the companies of like Hughes to gain from it, right? So, any progress on that?
The focus is exactly the same. We are going to replicate this, saying that a small group start looking at it. Another thing that has happened over the years within John Deere is saying that we are very, very clear that we are not going to build all the solutions. We know that there are smart people outside, smaller folks who are more nimble, who don't necessarily have the constraints of a large organizations and can work and deliver faster. So if you look at us globally, we have about 240 partners on our platform. And that's exactly what we plan to do in India, work with partners. So we have been actively talking to a lot of agri-tech startups, saying what's the progress they are making and how can we continue to work together. So that continues to be an area that we will continue to stay focused on.
More for Williams to answer this question, but from what I see, I definitely see that mindset because see, today's conditions, today's scenario demands agility, demands collaboration, and I see design thinking happening. As Vijay rightly said, I see some focus groups or different departments being created just to look at these aspects, and that brings in required agility. There's a lot of collaboration along with other startups too to bring in the value proposition. So I see that is happening.
In the electric world, there are probably 500 new companies that get formed annually, and probably a few of them fold up. But I think overall, whether it's an OEM or whether it's a startup or whether it's a company that's beginning to evolve, everybody is rethinking their models, because ultimately you have to solve a business problem and a people problem. It's not just about surviving through government funding or through something. You've got to solve a problem, and you've got to make it profitable for whoever is running that business finally. So there is a lot of startup activity, and large OEMs are working very closely in unison with startup companies and other mid-sized companies to make that solution happen. We can see it happening, and we can see the world is changing, and very rapidly. More so in India, in fact, and there are hundreds of such companies. We've not delved into the topic of technology, but I think it's sufficient to say that with the advent of 5G as applied to cellular and Wi-Fi technologies which exist in V2X, um, latencies will come down, and there will be more, you know, applications and communications that will allow vehicles to be very close to each other and yet be safe. Uh, and there's a lot going on in that space as well. We've not touched upon that today, more so because there were communication specialists are not there to talk to us. But I thank you for your patience. And with this, I'd like to maybe you want to ask one more little question, and let me ask one question to each one of them first. As he asks his question, and you can send him the microphone, I'm going to say you can answer by also giving your last lines on this topic. So answer and also say one last thing that you want to say about this space. Yeah. So first, let's hear the question, and then we wrap up. Sure. Go ahead.
We are talking about lot about data and connectivity, and from the connected vehicle perspective, it is as good as car as an IoT device. So, what are we doing on the security, especially at the vehicle level, because it is directly related to the safety of the vehicle and the passengers.
Brilliant question and great way to end it. I'd like to start. Maybe CBJ, you can answer first because you were big on this when we were having an offline, and then you can also wrap up by giving your one-liner.
Sure. Thanks. Amit. So, good question. Good that you brought it up, because cyber security is becoming very critical. And if you look at last couple of years, 3 years, we see a lot of cyber attacks and stuff happening. And with vehicle becoming as good as software on wheels, it is, I would say, more vulnerable, becoming more vulnerable. So there are different technologies that are coming in, and it is more of a layered approach, because it's not only about securing a hardware piece or a software piece on the vehicle, but it is about securing the complete stack up to the application, because there are multiple points of attack from where it can be attacked into. And how do you use encryption technologies? And multiple TLS and things are very common for communication. How do you harden the hardware and the software inside the vehicle? There are gateway and controller approaches within the vehicle architecture. So the architecture needs to be done from that perspective. Your cloud, how it is secured, how does it allow only that vehicle in that condition to communicate, how, and even the eventualities if for any reasons the vehicle get hacked or misbehaves, how do you eliminate that, all these things, intrusion detection. So whatever we have seen in the IT space in last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, same thing in a different context we are seeing here on the vehicle. And everybody is working on that. To an extent it is there, but cyber security is only the level of difficulty you go on increasing. So there is nothing like I have reached there. It is just to add your last thing, Samir. I talked about software-defined vehicle with 5G and other things. I feel if a software-defined vehicle and a software-defined infrastructure work in tandem, I think there are going to be multiple possibilities, because the way 4G unveiled the app ecosystem, this is going to open up the ecosystem for multiple other different kind of applications.
So again, Very good question. And again, even from within their perspective, we say that every tractor is a node on a network for us. That's how we evaluate. You can literally connect to any tractor sitting anywhere in the world if you have the right credentials to access those tractors today. But the solutions are the same, just what CV mentioned, right? And what the IT industry has seen over the last decade, couple of decades. Same thing apply to a tractor world with the right context. And as CV said, the game is never over. You just always need to stay a step ahead of whoever is trying to get into your system. And there are attacks on a daily basis, both on the digital side of things as well as on the hardware side of things, embedded side of things. There are enormous amounts of attempts being made. You just have to stay a step ahead of that, and there's enough precautions being done. As I said, it's not only for us, it's not only just the vehicle that is important, it's also the farmer's data. The way we draw a parallel is for a farmer, his farm related data is equivalent to a financial data for us, right? You're not going to be exposing your bank details openly. So farmer does not want to expose his farm related information. So we have to protect the data as well as the equipment, and all those precautions are already existing in place. And to wrap up, again, very, very exciting space. Again, agriculture, as I gave some examples, hopefully you've got a flavor of it. But having lived in this world, it's an exciting space to be. Technology has a huge play in it to address some of the challenges that I mentioned. And this is just the beginning. And as dear, we keep saying the best days are just ahead of us. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, as he rightly mentioned, like it's a great space in electric mobility domain. And the startup, the one of the good thing in India with the startup has more Indianness, more Atmanirbhar Bharat rather than talking. Actually, we are delivering for our people, developing for our product. And the base, like in next 3 to 4 years, surely we will have made in India cells, which is sustainable. So the dependency over the neighboring countries will reduce. And the technology front, yes, we have to look with the other alternatives other than the lithium. It takes some time for the maturity, but it's a matter of 4 to 5 years to go further. So technology is the right answers, and go electric if you get chance to go.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this debate thoroughly, although I was supposed to chair it, but I've enjoyed it thoroughly as much as I hope you have enjoyed listening. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.